Okay, so I'll go ahead and start with the first question here, which is, let's see here. It is, should America fund Israel? Why or why not? That is the first question. I'll turn it to Destiny. You want to go first?
He can go first. I'll go first every time. Yeah.
Suleiman, you can go first.
I don't mind going first.
Should America fund Israel? Need a pen?
Yeah, please.
Okay, take one real quick. Thanks. Hey, girls, get another pen.
Right, okay, so
brother.
should America fund Israel?
Yeah.
I'd say no whatsoever. And the reason is because it's a foreign country. And basically, every country should put their own interest first. So the fact that you basically got a foreign nation appropriate in that country, and I say the same thing about United Kingdom as well, so we can apply it to both in case they think it's a Brit talking about America. A foreign nation, you should never have a scenario where a foreign nation is basically being controlled by a foreign entity. Now, if America wasn't funding Israel, you wouldn't have many of the problems that we have in the Middle East. If you believe in this idea, which many of us don't, but even if you believe in this idea of might is right, well, might should be based on individual basis. It shouldn't be based on, for example, America's might being used by lobbyists within America to basically destroy the country. If you also want safety in America, you would ensure that you don't basically help or be complicit with basically a crazy nation that is basically destroying the Middle East, trying everything in its power to cause world war. Also, look at America. Like, when I come here, I'm shocked at the level of poverty that's here, the level of how people are struggling on the streets of America. There was a study come out recently that people are trying to decide whether to pay the bills or whether to basically, have rent, to have have food. So when you've got Americans doing that, and then this money is going to the Israel or going to Ukraine or many of these foreign nations, you're basically having a scenario where Americans are struggling. The second thing is, all this does is benefit the military-industrial complex. And again, who controls the military-industrial complex? Who controls the government? It's again Israel. If China, Russia, any other foreign nation was in the same situation, no one would accept it. So yeah, I believe that America should not be funding foreign nations when it comes to war. I'm not a pro complete exclusionary ideology. That would just not logistically. I don't think that makes sense, even from a multipolarity perspective. But you should not have a scenario where you basically have a foreign nation that controls America, and then because of that, it's acting the way it's Israel would never ever act in the way it's doing with Iran if it didn't have this idea that we're going to get America, we're going to get Britain, we're going to get these foreign nations to come and back us up.
Okay. That is 2 minutes. Go ahead, Destiny, your response?
Yeah, I think it's just a really basic game theory. If you live on a block with 10 people and you say, hey, nobody's allowed to form any alliances, we all have to be on ourselves, or on our own, what's going to happen is 2 neighbors are going to team up, 3 neighbors are going to team up, 5 neighbors are going to team up, and then you, who are all like individuals, are going to be like, okay, well, fuck us, because now 5 neighbors are going to come and beat one guy, 5 neighbors are going to come and beat another guy will join them, 6 guys will go and beat the one guy. You have to form alliances in the world. It's the way that the world works. We can't navigate the world pretending that if we decide to pull all of our money back from everybody, that everybody else in the world is going to do the same. If the United States leaves some particular place, Russia will fill the absence. China will fill the absence. They've already tried to do it in the Middle East. Russia's trying to do it right now in Eastern Europe, and you've got China who wants to do it all over the South China Sea. So the idea that we can just back away from everything and then lose the security of our trade routes? What if China or Russia says, sorry, we're actually going to turn off your microchips. We're going to turn off your access to Taiwan. We're going to turn off your shipping to Africa. We're going to turn off your shipping to Europe. We would have to say, oh, well, I guess we can't do anything because we hate the military-industrial complex. Military-industrial complex, like Theodore Roosevelt said, is incredibly important. We need to guarantee U.S. ability to trade and interact with countries with our Navy. It's the reason why we have one, and it's why we've been so prosperous. It's why these microphones probably come from other countries. It's why every single thing in this room was shipped in somewhere else. It was on the backs of the security of what the United States Navy is able to provide. So yeah, we have to have alliances. We have to work with other countries. We have to have people that are on our side, because if they're not on our side, they're going to join somebody else. If somebody's about to come and knock your door down and America says, we're not going to help you, they're not going to sit there and have their house be demolished. They're either going to join the enemy or they're going to join somebody else. I don't think the move in World War II would have been to say like, oh, well, we'll let Nazi Germany take over the entirety of Europe and we'll see what happens after that. Hopefully they don't come for us, even though Japan did with Pearl Harbor. So yeah, I think that having alliances is important. I think that it ensures our ability to operate in the world freely. I think it gives us access to all sorts of other countries and cultures in ways that we wouldn't otherwise. And I think that is a value that we should absolutely continue to champion in the United States.
Okay, I don't think you heard my argument, because I literally said don't be exclusionary, right? So I agree that you need alliances. I agree that you need trade agreements. What I am saying is do not basically give money away to a country that is then destabilizing a region and actually having threats in your own country, and then have a scenario where your own people are struggling. These are two different things. You can, for example, the United States has trade agreements with Saudi. That's probably not a great example because of the Houthis, but for example, the United States have trade agreements with the UAE. They have trade agreements with Jordan, many other countries. It doesn't mean that they're basically financially funding them to help with a genocide, or basically financially funding them to help destabilize the region. The whole problem what we have is when the United States has become the tool of Israel, you have a scenario where the entire region is basically there's got complete havoc in the region. That causes problem within the region and is actually a threat to the United States from a financial perspective and from a stability perspective and a safety perspective. And on top of that as well, it's a problem in terms of the people in that country are having to leave that country because you've basically destroyed that country and destabilized it. Hence why immigration into Europe is so high. So in reality, there is a much more, and China is a prime example of that, right? So China has got trade agreements with Africa, with certain countries in South Asia, right? They've not had to bomb them. They've not had to support a war. They've not had to destabilize the region. They financially gone in there. Now, you can disagree with some of their financial ethics in terms of, for example, what they did in Sri Lanka and the port, where they basically almost made the agreements so difficult for the Sri Lankans, but then the Sri Lankans maybe appreciating it based on what was happening before. But that means you can have trade. So I'm not against exclusion. I'm for trade. I'm for agreements. I'm for these type of things. What I'm against is sending money for basically no reason other than destabilizing the region and gifting that money essentially. Hence why you had basically a bill go through now, which was basically to gift them because they're struggling right now. Iron Dome is so financially supported by America, which again gives them that vigor to basically start being so crazy and destabilizing the region. When you look at many of their acts, they've done them acts thinking we've got this backup from the United States so we can act irrationally. And irrational, when you've got an irrational actor, the risk for us is that there could be a World War III.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at who's destabilizing the Middle East right now, I don't think Israel is the source of the destabilization. I think Iran and their funding of Hezbollah in Lebanon, or Iran's funding of the Houthis in Yemen, or Iran's funding and support for Hamas in Israel, I think that this is a far greater source of destabilization than anything that the United States might be contributing. If you look at raw cost of lives, the Iran-Iraq war cost some 1 to 2 million lives, which is more than every single Israeli, Palestinian, Arab conflict combined times 10. So it's not even close to the level of destabilization. And then when we look at we're destabilizing the Middle East by supporting Israel, we need to pull out, so what? It can look more like Yemen, so it can look more like Syria, so it can look more like Iraq or Iran. What are our stable bastions of thriving Muslim majority theocracies or dictatorships in the Middle East that we want everything to look more similar to? I think that Israel is doing pretty good considering they're sitting on land with almost no natural resources. All of their industry comes from technology and the agriculture that they've brutally terraformed the land to support. I think that it's good to support Israel there. I think that they do a lot of good for the United States. I think they give us a good eye into the Middle East. I think it's a good example of a democratic country working even in the Middle East better than anything else surrounding them. And I think we should continue to support said country because, yeah.
So the things you mentioned, right? The problem is you mentioned all those countries, and we're like, look at those countries. But those countries are only like that because of the US bombing them for Israel. You mentioned the Iran-Iraq war, but there was a huge amount of loss of life, right? But what actually happened with that? You basically had a scenario where one of the countries was the number 1 best economy in that region. The other one was the number 4 best economy in that region. And again, it was because of Western kind of pushing. And even to the point where Saddam thought that he's got the support of the West for certain aspects of it. And also, there was also a certain Arab countries who did as well, so I have to be completely accurate on that. But there was this support, again, because they wanted to destabilize the region that actually made them go into conflict in the first place, or both. And that's what the dumb move that Saddam made, because he shouldn't have literally listened to them and trust them when his economy was doing so well, as was Iran's economy. So again, it comes back to the same thing. It's Western intervention in these countries that is causing the destabilization. You mentioned Iran. Iran was a democracy until America came and destabilized it and basically ended the democracy in America in the 50s. And then you basically put the monarchs in, and then again they got turned over. So you have the same scenario. So when you look at it, the acts of Iran when it comes to financially funding the defense that you've got against Israeli aggression in the Middle East, or for example Israeli aggression through America, because they're forcing them through the control of the United States. As you said, they run the world. I mean, you said it with mocking, but in reality it was completely accurate. They run the United States of America, and then they're forcing the destabilization of those countries. And also, for example, you've completely forgot the fake weapons of mass destruction, which again was done for Israel to destroy Iraq when what 1 million Iraqis plus were killed. But what were they killed for? They were killed for nothing, and hence why many people who I know, such as Lucas Gage, realized that, wait, I'm fighting this war for this foreign nation, and they had an epiphany and realized that the Zionist state is a huge problem for world peace.
All right.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
2
I don't
minutes on
think.
the clock. Go ahead, please.
The United States and the West was not the reason for the Iran-Iraq War. The United States did not tell Saddam Hussein to invade Kuwait. The United States did not tell Saddam Hussein to gas the Kurdish people. The United States did not tell Assad to gas his own people. The United States was not the instigator for the Syrian civil war. The United States did not cause the Arab Spring to, erupt all across the Arab world. The idea that the United States is so singularly powerful that it can uniquely disrupt and cause all of these countries to fall into disarray is probably more a reflection on those countries than any U.S. foreign policy. I acknowledge that, especially through the Cold War, the United States was quite interventionist in probably negative ways in a lot of different countries, and the Middle East is not accepted from that. However, a lot of that was only possible because of the destabilization that already existed in these countries. Even with the installation of the Shah, the only reason why that was even able to happen is because that country was experiencing massive issues relating to unemployment. That's why they wanted to nationalize the oil fields. That's why BP and Great Britain begged us to come in and help them control the assets that they'd invested all that money into. I'm not saying that U.S. or foreign action is perfect here, but these countries all have issues relating to how they run, relating to how their leaders conduct themselves in war, relating to, gassing their own civilians or using torture or other means of trying to control their populations. Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Bashar Assad, the Houthis, none of these people are exceptions to this. Even the monarch in Saudi Arabia bombing the Houthis, the Iran-Iraq war, Iran attacking Saudi Arabia. There's a whole shit show of things going on here that can't all possibly be blamed on the United States. And if they can, even if we wanted to run with all of that, then maybe they don't need to be rulers. If they could be so easily meddled with or so easily influenced by the United States because of things that have happened, 30, 40, 50 years ago, I don't know if that's like a strong argument for the stability of any of these countries. Because again, if it's not us meddling in them, it would be the Soviet Union, it would be China. We can say no, but like people complain about, Al-Qaeda came from the Mujahideen and blah, blah, blah. Well, who did we fund them to fight off? It was because the Soviets were trying to install their own government in Afghanistan. Again, world meddling is not unique to any country. We don't do it as much as we used to. And I understand that there are issues that happened in the Middle East because of some meddling, but they can't all be blamed on the United States.
Okay, that's 2 minutes. Sulaiman, your response to that?
Cool. Yeah, so look, this is just completely inaccurate and changing history to what it is, right? Like, it's pretending that basically in 1988, when them students took off over the U.S. embassy and exposed the fact that the U.S. directly intervened and overthrew the democracy in Iran, didn't happen. Like, everybody knows that happened. Like, how can you say it didn't happen? Everybody knows it. When you mentioned the Arab Spring, right? So some of it was organic, right? But the vast majority of it was inorganic. I can give you Syria as an example. Syria was completely inorganic. You had basically a scenario where there was people protesting, which you have in many countries, disagreeing with Bashar, and then this was propagated and propagated through the media, through the West, to essentially cause a huge amount of protest, because this is what they do. They know that when you propagate certain amount of information and you cause a populace to basically be in open arms, you can basically destabilize the country, and that's what they did. So that happened for sure. In terms of you saying, look, and you made a huge contradiction, because first you said very early on that we are America, America dominates, we dominate everyone, and now you're saying it's completely unfathomable that the United States could dominate. But this is again inaccurate, because when you look at the actual situations that occurred, and we mentioned them, the United States was involved. So for example, when you look at Saddam Hussein had very good relations with the United States. His actions were supported by the United States. You look at the Saudis and the Houthis, you mentioned them in Yemen. It was the United States involved. And it's only in 2023 when the Houthis stood and banged in Yemen and basically took over every single region, every major city, except for the town of Marib, where they were basically closing in, that the Saudis and America were forced to come to the table. But that was American support. Because Saudis, let's be clear, they're not going to stand and bang. They've just got the financial power to do so, but not the military power, not the other aspects that basically the intelligence and various other things that which the United States basically provide. So when you look at that region, and when I say the United States, I'm saying it's for Israel. It's for that country, because they want destabilization.
If you want, I'll give you another 30 if you need to finish.
No, it's all.
You did? Okay. I'll turn it to you, Destiny. Then we can hit the next topic if you guys feel.
Yeah, I mean, stable countries don't have protests that turn into attempted coups. It just doesn't happen, no matter how strong you think the United
College
States is.
students.
When I say that we dominate, I mean that we dominate economically and we dominate culturally. Everybody listens to our music, everybody listens to our movies, everybody watches our podcast. You probably got people in the Middle East watching this podcast right now, as long as it's not illegal in their particular country to watch. That's what I mean when I talk about U.S. domination. I don't mean we're necessarily intervening in every single country. We do try to intervene in some countries, but it's not because, like, if you look at the history of Yemen, Yemeni destabilization didn't happen because of the United States. This has been a destabilized country for decades. There have been fights going back to, from my recollection, at least the 60s, where tons of Middle Eastern countries have huge investments in what's going on in Yemen and supporting different leaders. Or again, if you look at Afghanistan, you've got huge investments in places like the Soviet Union trying to send their leadership over and to be installed in that country. Again, I'm not going to defend every single intervention that the United States has done in the past. I agree that, especially during the Cold War era, I don't think a lot of it is defensible. But to continue to blame the destabilization of the actions of America during the Cold War, or to say that these countries have no autonomy and they just can't resist and they're getting constantly overthrown, and school students funded by the United States and Twitter are able to completely destroy the entire country of Syria, I think that there are more fundamental problems that exist there if another country can give you a gentle push and all of a sudden your country falls into chaos.
Okay. You have a response to that, or next? You want me to hit the
I
next
can
topic?
respond to it. Or we
Yeah,
can go to the
respond
next.
to it, and then we'll move into the next topic.
Right,
if that's
cool.
cool with you guys.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you adequately argued your
So
points.
look, the problem is that you are now making the argument that when you don't have when someone isn't doing protests, and there is an outside interference, that can't overthrow the country. But that is completely inaccurate. We're seeing the college protests in the United States where basically the government is so harshly attacking the students and stopping them from doing so. Now imagine there was foreign intervention in that, and you could basically have a scenario where the entire country could be overthrown. You could have that scenario if a populace is enough right down the middle where people have had enough. You can easily overthrow a country, and we've seen that history shows it. Iran, how was Iran overthrown? They overthrew the democracy in this way. How did even the monarchy get overthrown? They got overthrown because they started a printing press, and then people had issues with the monarchy, and again that was because of American Israeli intervention. So you can have a destabilization from foreign actors, hence why the United States and the United Kingdom have been so specific about not having foreign intervention. It's why you guys want to ban TikTok, right? Because of foreign intervention. Why not be chill about it? Because you think the foreign intervention can cause destabilization in a country. So every country knows that external forces are able to and do try and destabilize a country, and that doesn't mean that the country is weak. Sometimes a country could be like 50-50. You could have a country which, for example, in Turkey, where you've got people like Erdogan who's more towards Islamic ideals, for example, or you've got the secularist. That country, if America wanted to basically do it, and they tried to do it with Golan and so on and so forth, they could basically push it to have it being overthrown. So this can happen quite easily.
Okay. I'll go to the next topic now, unless you had something that you want to follow up on that one.
Who started this one? Do you remember?
Oh shit. I think Sulaiman started this
I think
one.
I started, yeah.
No, he started it.
Because
No, I think it was me.
it was him. Because Destiny started the first two
Yeah.
There you
with
go.
Islam. So you haven't.
Okay, I'll end it if I.
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll go on to the next topic.
Yeah,
That's
I
cool.
would just say that I mean, like, if you look at the United States and you compare TikTok to whatever the U.S. was doing in Syria or whatever the U.S. is doing in any other country, TikTok is a massive application that is downloaded on over 200 million phones or whatever in the United States. The United States is not doing a propaganda campaign on that level. Remember, when we say that the United States is overthrowing all of these Middle Eastern countries, we're talking about these incredibly subtle things that are very hard to source or very hard to find. That is in no way comparable to TikTok. And also, the comparison of like college students right now on U.S. campuses, they're not about to overthrow the government. It's going to be a drama. It's going to be a meme for a week or two more, or however long this lasts, and then they're going to go back to school, and everybody's going to forget about it, because that's how protests typically go in the United States. And when you say in the United States, like, couldn't foreign powers, try to influence you guys, and like, well, couldn't that be happening now? It is happening now, of course. But the United States is a stable democracy, so the idea of this country being cooed by a bunch of college students is a lot less likely, because we have stronger institutions here, and we guard our democratic principles here much closer than other countries do.
Okay. So the next topic, great arguments on both sides, guys. Really great stuff.